As promised, here he is, Cleve Backster. Cleve, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much.
Really is an honor to have you here. I mean, I really have. I've heard people quoting your work and all, talking about you for years and years and years, and so it's great to actually talk to the person finally who did the research. And that's kind of, I guess, what I'd like to hear about first, how all of this began for you. And I'm sure you've told this probably a million times. You're getting tired of it. But, you got to know when you're doing an interview like this, you got to know. How did it begin?
Actually, it began back in New York City, and in a laboratory I had there, I had only two plants in this laboratory. I had a Dracaena cane plant. That's one of those with a long trunk and long leaves, and a rubber plant. And it occurred to me one night, because I worked very much late at night in polygraph research, I wonder how long it takes water to get from the root area of that Dracaena all the way up through that trunk and down into those long leaves. So I figured, well, I've got polygraph equipment all over the place. I was at school we were running back then. And the galvanic skin response section of the polygraph is supposed to measure resistance changes.
That's right.
So I thought if I took a couple of those electrodes that we use, the finger contacts on people, and just sort of strap them on each side of one of those long leaves down toward the end, after I watered the plant, as the contaminated water would go up the trunk and down into the leaves, the leaf would become a better conductor.
That's right.
And I should be able to get a tracing that showed me the rate of climb.
You would find, in other words, you were looking for less resistance as the water made its way up?
Yes, the contaminated water would be a better conductor and make the leaf better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And is that what you got?
No, it isn't. If anything, the leaf trended downward. The tracing from the leaf trended downward rather than upward. Now,
how could that be?
Well, years after the fact, I know very much what it is, because the plant was in such a state of excitation at being attached that it was already equivalent of human, high human emotional level, and it had nothing to do but calm down from where it was.
So, in other words, you had so shocked that plant said to itself, what the hell are these? And it was in a state of excitation.
Yes, it was, and therefore this countered what I was looking for, which I didn't see at all, is an accurate representation, because I wasn't counting on consciousness of a plant to be, another factor.
Well, I doubt it was your first guess, Cleve. So, to what did you originally attribute the fact that resistance didn't drop?
Well, it didn't take very long for me to figure something was not going by schedule. About 1 minute along in this initial observation, I saw something that looked very much like the contour of the galvanic skin response tracing with a human that was telling an important lie on the polygraph.
Meaning what, Cleve? In other words, you saw the resistance, you were measuring resistance, so
yes.
it did what? It spiked?
The tracing would swing upward and then recover.
Oh.
And, do you have that book in front of you, by the way?
Are you talking about primary perception? Yes, primary perception. I have it right here.
Yeah, because on page 24, what I'm trying to describe to you is the galvanic skin response going up it's peaking toward the top.
Okay, I've got it. All right, so folks, oh my God, I see. Now this is showing responses right off the little chart here. I mean,
yes, the figure to the left is the actual tracing from the plant, and then the figure to the right is a typical tracing from a human taking a polygraph test.
Oh my goodness. So
this changed my priorities, and I stopped worrying about how long it took moisture to rise, and I said, wow, it's almost as though this plant is showing me human-like reactions. And so I changed my priority then, and I said, well, what can I do that would be threatening the well-being of the plant, similar to the threat to the well-being of a person taking a polygraph test and lying on a very important question, such as, did you fire that shot causing the death of so-and-so?
Cleve, how long have you been researching lie detector technology?
1948.
1948.
When I got into the polygraph about 56 years ago. And then, of course, I've been 38 and a half years on the primary perception since 1966.
This is the way very important discoveries are made by accident, more times than not. I can see why you'd absolutely jump out of your skin to see
well, you know, on
this.
the right-hand page there, on page 25, then you'll see that around 13 minutes along in this initial tracing, I thought, well, I know what I'll do to threaten the well-being of this plant. I'm going to burn the leaf. And all the change...
You're going to burn what?
I'm going to burn that very leaf that I have attached to the polygraph on the Dracaena cane plant.
Oh, my God.
And there you'll see what happened over toward the right-hand side. And that was merely the imagery of my burning the leaf. It was the only change. The building was empty. There was no distraction. I wasn't touching the equipment. I wasn't touching the plant. And when that imagery and intent came into my mind...
Wait a minute, I want to understand. You burned the leaf while it was still attached to the plant with a mechanism on it?
No, that was merely my intention to burn it. And when you see that tracing jump right up to the top of the page there, I said, wow, it's almost as though this plant read my mind. So way back, even then in this initial observation, I could see that something really special was going on.
It is as though the plant read your mind.
And at the bottom of the page, you'll see the wild excitation. And I thought, well, gee whiz,
All right, folks, for those of you that unfortunately cannot see what we're talking about right now, it's kind of like an earthquake, a strip. You know, when you see an earthquake, the pen goes up and down, right? Well, it's just like that. And it's a very long period. How long on this top graph, Cleve, were you monitoring? How much time does that represent?
The recording goes at 6 inches a minute. And there are 5 seconds in between each of those vertical lines that you see there.
I see.
So this, and in fact, that particular one is the one I have on the cover of the book. Also, you'll notice.
Yes. Well, if you just attach a plant up and everything is well and just spiffy, does a plant go through gyrations in a 24-hour period like that, or does it generally stay flatline kind of?
It would stay fairly stable. You'll notice leading up until that intention on my part to do something to threaten the well-being of the plant,
yes,
it was fairly calm. The little gyrations that you see in the tracing are different than the smooth tracing you would get from a human, because the plant, the cellular discharge from the cells of the plant go directly up into the electrodes, and with a human, you have cellular discharge from the cells, but the body is such that it acts like a capacitor. It makes a smooth tracing.
Cleve, is this repeatable?
The idea of people being able to see this event on the polygraph, hundreds of people have done that.
Okay. So then let's talk for a second. Let's say this is absolute science. I mean, it's absolutely real, which is what you're telling me.
Absolutely.
Then what do you attribute the spike to? I mean, we can bandy around things like, well, the plant read my mind.
Yes.
Is that really?
Yes, well, the research that followed that, this is the thing that launched it. There are many observations that followed this that really reinforced the idea that the plant was very much into the quality of your thinking. And probably the method of transfer is imagery, not words, because I wasn't speaking out loud. And just the intent in my envisioning in order, the idea of burning that plant leaf was picked up by the plant.
Scientists have been recently learning a lot more about intent in general in the context of consciousness discussions.
Intentionality.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this ties right in. If you pretend, and in fact, when my partner in the polygraph school came in later that morning, he pretended he was going to burn the plant leaf. Nothing would happen. You had to intend, and the plant could tell the difference between your pretense and your intent.
Well, that's pretty interesting. You're saying when you did it, you really had intent. You didn't actually do it, right?
No, I really lost interest. I thought, well, this plant is pretty special. Some very interesting things are going on. And all I did was I made a very feeble pass. If you'll notice the bottom of page 25 there, a feeble pass at burning the leaf. You see where it says CB lit the match.
Yes.
And I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to see anything anyway because of the overreactivity. So I forgot about that. So I didn't actually go through with but I did intend to originally.
Well, what are we talking about here? Do you think, Cleve? Is this some sort of what? What is it?
Well, as following through from this, I went from the plants and I got into a whole series of testing of chicken eggs and found out how to electrode those, and then from there it went to bacterial cultures, etc.
Wait, let's stay with chicken eggs for a second. What did you discover about chicken eggs?
Well, I had a Doberman pincer in the lab back in New York, and I would feed the dog an egg a day. I would separate the yolk from the white.
Right.
And this particular day, when I was running it was a long-term monitoring of the plant, because in this particular case, I had run hundreds of feet of chart paper just trying to see what the plant had to show me rather than to make it do things. And then I eventually ended up piping the signal into a meter, so I didn't use up so much chart paper. It was pretty expensive.
Sure.
And the meter was sitting on this little shelf where I was preparing the dog's food, and when I cracked the egg, the meter just went into wild agitation. And nothing had happened except my cracking of the egg. And so I thought, wow, I'm not going to let this get the best of me. I'll figure out a way to electrode that egg. Something's going on there.
In the egg.
And so I figured out that if I boiled a couple of little cubes of sponge in a little saline water and then pinched the moisture out of them and put them on each side of the egg, the moisture would soak through the outer eggshell and hit the inner skin of the eggs, and it made an ideal electroding configuration.
So you now had a connection, a viable connection to an egg.
Absolutely. And I went through hours and hours of recording from eggs. In fact, I have some of them in the book.
And what did you discover with eggs?
Eggs were turned in also.
Reacting the same way a plant would?
Yes. In fact, if you were to pick up one egg and shake it, the other egg that was attached would react. So,
now, this sounds an awful lot like quantum stuff to me.
Well, it ends up that way. Years later, I've been coming to that conclusion, too. I think we're into non-locality because some of the stuff I do is at a great distance between the material I'm testing and the donor of that material.
Cleve, how can you rule out the experimenter in this?
Well, you can't. In fact, that's
right?
a very important aspect. The experimenter can really contaminate the experiment.
Or he could even be the result of the experiment. Have you found a way to rule that out?
Well, the only way that I've been able to do it is to totally automate the experiment and have a programmer that actually executes the whole experiment, and I leave the lab at the time it's going on.
And then what?
Well, then I can...
No, I mean in terms of result.
Well, I can get a real indication of things that are going on in the lab that aren't disturbed by human consciousness.
Yes, sir. But in terms of the randomness of when the experiment is done, do you still get the same result? Well, in fact, you get a better result because you're getting a purer tracing without the distractions of human consciousness. So, okay, so that would eliminate the experimenter from the equation. You feel you successfully did that?
Yes. In fact, the initial experiment that I published before I went public with this thing involved the automated dropping of brine shrimp in simmering water at one end of the lab.
Yes.
And at the other, in several different rooms, there were plants attached to each to a separate polygraph. And I found that earlier I'd observed very much that plants were very much attuned to the death of any kind of life form in the lab, insects, things of that nature.
Really?
And so when I designed that experiment, I chose brine shrimp to stay out of trouble with the anti-vivisectionist kind of people.
So is the bottom line of this that everything is apparently or seemingly connected to everything, or is it things in more proximity, Cleve, that are connected to each other?
Proximity isn't a requirement. It's on a need-to-know basis. In other words, there's an attunement, and once there is a reason for the communication to continue, it continues over vast distances.
Once there is, you've got it. Once there is a reason for the communication, and the reason for the communication could only be, I think, proximity, right?
The initial proximity.
The initial proximity.
Right.
Okay. Then that might explain why twins, for example, separated by continents halfway around the world, can identify times when things happen. That sort of
be a logical explanation.
But there has to be a preliminary physical near connection, and then there's some other connection that's maintained. Right.
This has been my experience, at least, that, in other words, a lot of my work, you'll see as you progress through the book, it leads up to the testing of human cells in vitro. And when the human cells were left in my lab, some of the work I was getting reaction from the donor over a distance of 300 miles.
Wow. It may be that distance and time, I don't suppose. Now, here's one for you, Cleve. Have you been able to, in any way, approach measuring the speed of the communication?
Well, I've come to the conclusion, after really trying to explore this, that there is no time consumed, because now we're getting into quantum physics and non-locality, because non-locality does not involve time consumption or distance limitation.
Right. So, no time. In other words, the speed of thought or occurrence or simultaneous quantum whatever is just instant.
Instantaneously, right. And when I've talked to quantum physicists about this, I said, well, gee whiz, once you start saying that there's any frequency takes time.
Yes, indeed.
And if you start to expand that beyond a local distance and say, well, how long does it take something on the other side of the universe to become aware of something going on here,
yes,
as far as quantum, the quantum theory is concerned? And they said 0 seconds instead of thousands of light years.
So I understand that you're not, I guess, a quantum physicist. But,
no, not at all.
But I would like to understand, I mean, I guess I understand the speed of light, and I understand that we're not supposed to be able to break that speed of light.
That's the going theory, yes.
But quantum communication clearly appears to do that.
Yes, there's a Bell theorem they seem to cite a lot in non-locality that talks about atoms that are spun in a certain direction, and the direction changes over a distance, and one mimics the other, even though distance is in between.
That's a concept I just can't grab, how that communication is occurring outside of everything physical on this earth and beyond.
Well, I don't grasp it either. I was so happy that the quantum physicists came along to give me some support. Because, people would ask me, would you please define this communication? And I'd say, whoa, as long as I've been doing the research in this field, the only way I've stayed out of trouble is not to try to explain the nature of the communication as far as the scientific community is concerned. I said I can give you hundreds of high-quality observations, but once I try to give you a faulty explanation, then you throw out my good observations.
Well, you're absolutely cautious and correct to do that, and that's exactly what they would do, because there's no good answer to that right now, is there?
Right. Well, when you get into quantum physics, they seem to have delved into it a good bit, but even among physicists, there's a lot of, lots of discussion and conflict sometimes.
Well, that's because it has to cut right across everything we know about physics and say there's something about everything we know that's totally wrong at some level, at the quantum level, maybe.
Well, this is one of the problems. You have whole bodies of information that is threatened by some of these new concepts. And it's really strange. It's very hard to get some of these people to change their story. Once they've written books and articles and so forth,
Well, Cleve, the skeptics who are defending the status quo scientifically must say something to explain this. What do they say?
You're talking about the protectors of the faith, you mean?
Yes, the protectors. Yes.
Well, they just, they don't go to the trouble to try to explain anything. In fact, they don't go to the trouble to look for themselves to see something is going on.
Hold it on that note. We'll be right back. Cleve, the average modern American, when they hear the Native Americans say they can talk to trees and communicate with Mother Earth in ways that we don't understand, they generally go, yeah, right. That kind of attitude. They just sort of, sure. But doesn't a lot of what your research seems to show here indicate that their beliefs hold some water?
Absolutely. I learned to have a lot of respect for the beliefs I only heard about secondhand before I got into this kind of research.
Right.
Have you ever heard of the book called The Field by Lynn McTaggart?
I have, yes.
This is a wonderful book for anyone that wants some of the things we were trying to get to the bottom of. The subtitle is "The Quest for the Secret Force of the Universe." And she gets into all kinds of things with the quantum physicists and so forth. And
well, I'm trying to shoot holes. I mean, your work is incredible,
yeah.
but in a way, I'm trying to shoot holes in it because if it's real, then it has such incredible significance that, you know, all of the world's science should be all over it. So that's why I asked you about the skeptics, Cleve. There must be some major way they knock all this down. Or is there not?
Well, they'll use excuses like repeatability, and of course, as far as current scientific method is concerned, it's sort of built on the idea of designing an experiment and getting a lot of repetitions and accumulating data.
But it is repeatable, isn't it?
Well, to see the phenomena reacting to different spontaneous reactions is very repeatable. But spontaneity is very, very important because once you have done something once, the second and third time, it doesn't disturb the plant. And so when you design an experiment and you expect to get repeatability on the very same event.
But wait a minute, the implication of that is the plant learns.
Absolutely. Nothing's going to hurt it, and it doesn't react anymore. And the current researchers that are somewhat critical don't understand this. They don't realize that spontaneity and repeatability are not compatible.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time grasping all of this too. So once the plant has learned that really it is not going to be harmed by this particular action, then you've got to do something else.
Yes.
To cause it, but within those confines, it's totally repeatable.
Yes, it is. Or you can bring in different plants, although it would take a long time to do it, and only use the plant just for one aspect of the experiment.
Uh-huh.
But the Russians have done, they did a great job of replicating the experiment way back in 1972, and I didn't know about it until some of the translations came back.
Oh, no kidding.
And you heard of Chris Bird, and Peter Tompkins wrote The Secret Life of Plants book, and Chris Bird also did Russian translations. But some of the material that was translated, I found that well, there was an article called Flower Recall. That when that got translated, I saw that they were doing very sophisticated work in replicating my experiment. And I went over to Prague in 1973. There was a international conference on psychotronics, the first international conference, and I was chairman of the plant, animal, human communication section. And I couldn't understand why these Russian scientists were all coming up and wanting their pictures taken with me. I don't get that kind of attention back here.
Yeah.
And it turns out that they were very well aware of the Russian replication of this work.
I wonder what the Russians were doing with the information.
Well, I don't know beyond the very idea of just the pure scientific aspect of it. I guess it's anyone's guess, but they were doing something that they were using hypnosis and a very good hypnotic subject in order to engender emotionality in the subject in order for the plant to react to it. And this has been a very difficult thing to do ordinarily.
Oh, so that's fascinating.
Yeah, and here, back in my counterintelligence corps days in the Central Intelligence Agency, my big chase around the world practically was to find out what spooky secret interrogation method the Russians were using. I had a team that could go anywhere to study this.
Right.
And it's rather ironic that the thing I was afraid they were using is some kind of hypnosis and post-hypnotic suggestion in order to create espionage, contacts in foreign countries. And it turns out that the very thing that made their replication of my experiment so successful was hypnosis.
Hypnosis. Why hypnosis? Did they manage to engender some sort of great fear in the person?
Well, by suggestion, you can, by mere suggestion, you can create an emotional surge in the person by bringing up something that they're very, very, very terrorized of. And the power of suggestion that you have available to you when using hypnosis allows you to turn this on and off almost like a faucet.
Okay. Well, the communication part of it, which is instantaneous through time and space, is hard enough to buy. But, but now we're getting down to, I mean, after all, Cleve, a plant doesn't have a brain. And we're talking about memory of an event. That plant learned and then didn't react the same way a second time. So
Makes
what
you-
are we talking about
It
here?
makes you wonder a little bit about the completeness of our knowledge of where memory is with the human.
Well, yes, doesn't it? There have been these intriguing experiments, of course, Cleve, where they've taken the heart and lungs from one donor and put them in somebody else who then picked up their habits and wants and desires.
Right, I've read about that.
And so then one might imagine some memory is at a cellular level, I guess?
Well, at least that. And also remote viewing may get into this too.
It may, I know.
I was invited to their first international conference on remote viewing to give a talk.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, well I'm the one that got Ingo Swann and Hal Puthoff together that started all that stuff at Stanford Research Institute.
Oh my goodness! I see. I didn't know that. I've interviewed most of the people in this field. This has been, for me, one of the more exciting, intriguing things of my whole life. The realization of this non-locality and also mass intent. I've done some pretty freaky experiments myself with the audience, Cleve, over the years. Pretty strange experiments. Inexplicable experiments, weather control, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I've got this feeling that it all meshes together, that there's this other side, this quantum other side of things that we don't yet understand, and that's where most of this fits in, including remote viewing.
Right.
You agree with that?
Yes, I do. In fact, back when I was still going to college, it was in my first and second year of college, I was very deeply involved in hypnosis and excuse me, in the book, in this, my one and only book, by the way, I'm not a book writer, but particularly this one was important. In the introduction, I sort of go through, it's autobiographical, but it was delving into hypnosis very, very much into what would be equivalent of my senior year, junior and senior year of high school. I was in prep school at the time, and then also in college. And I had people doing things that would be very similar to remote viewing back then. I would say that even though you're sitting in this chair and you're in a deep, deep sleep, I want you to make a trip, and you're here. I'm going to guide you, and I would guide them to a different location on the campus and have them explain to me what was going on there.
And what did you conclude from that experiment?
Well, I'll tell you, I was getting some results. It wasn't a formal experiment, but it was very high quality observations.
Who? You've done all kinds of things with all kinds of things. Plants, eggs, what else?
Well, the human cells, it really worked up to finally the experiment that we hope to do next now will involve the simultaneous testing of the conventional polygraph parameters, the respiration and the galvanic skin response and the cardiovascular recording, along with EEG simultaneously, and then also along with that another tracing that is measuring the in vitro cells from that same subject that has the hardwire contacts hooked up.
What do you think might happen?
Well, I pretty much know what's going to happen. And in fact, toward the end of the book, I get into the ultimate thing with the human cell testing. I'd done an awful lot of work testing leukocytes from the human being that we collect by using a little saline solution, having the person munch on the solution, and that brings out white cells, oral leukocytes, through the roof of the mouth. And we centrifuge that and then pipe that off the concentrated cells and put electrodes in them, gold wire electrodes. And I've done, in fact, there was a book, Secret Life of Your Cells, that was based on that work that was published about my work.
No, but I mean, describe to me how you expect the experiment to unfold.
Well, now the ultimate in that, at the HeartMath Institute, we did some work that produced the final tracings in the last portion of the book, where we just took a sample of human blood and put 2 gold wire electrodes in that sample of blood, 5 milliliters of blood, piped it right into standard EEG equipment.
Yes.
And it got beautiful tracings that seemed to reflect the emotionality of the donor, even though the donor was remotely located on the other side of the room.
Wow. That's a wow.
Yes.
For sure. Are you getting a lot of money for your research? No.
I don't. And again, because of the school that I conduct, teaching police officers primarily how to conduct polygraph tests.
Yes.
That is the thing that is allowed me to sort of struggle along. I've maintained a very well-equipped lab since 1977, the old Drug Enforcement Agency lab here in San Diego.
Well, since you've been doing this work so long, I can't resist. Is it or is it not possible for somebody who knows what they're doing to beat a polygraph exam with a good examiner?
Well, I would say if you had a competent examiner using modern technique and the issue was strong enough, not just trivia, that I would say you could not do it. Now, the technique that I've devised and introduced to the polygraph field is the one that is the standard that is used and favored by the Department of Defense, the Polygraph Institute, the military and the FBI.
That's quite something.
And as much as I've had to do with developing that, I have no feeling that I could beat the polygraph if I had done something that was, a rather serious issue.
So you're saying, yes, it would depend on the seriousness or importance of the issue at question. So if it was a small, kind of insignificant thing, you might tell a white lie about that?
I think that you could mess around there and create confusion, at least for the polygraph examiner. We don't say because a person sits down to a polygraph to take a test that automatically one situation is as good as another. In fact, we have a way that we systematically evaluate how good our case information is one factor. The strength of issue, if there's punishment involved, if the polygraph examination leads the investigators to something that's admissible in court, and the distinctness of issue, if they did it, do they know they did it? So we have a little 5-position scale we apply against each of those factors. And a good polygraph situation is one that rates very high in all of those. Good case information, strength of issue, distinctness of issue. So when you go to the other end of the scale on trivia, you don't have those factors satisfied.
Why will the courts not yet allow it as evidence?
Well, I've testified over 50 times in court in the polygraph.
But I mean, polygraph results generally are not allowed, are
I know,
they?
but that's what I'm saying. I've testified on the results of polygraph that many times.
Well, how do you do that? If it's not allowed?
Well, this has been over a lot of years.
Well, I understand, but still, if it's not admissible in courts, how do they get you in on the stand?
That isn't an accurate statement in blanket form. In other words, it depends on the state. It depends on, for instance, juvenile courts. It's been easier for me to testify in.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and about half of my work has been done for the prosecution, maybe half for the defense.
Very interesting.
Federal and state courts.
So juveniles not having the same rights as full adults.
Well, I'm not sure. I think they're just a little more liberal in allowing it in.
Yes.
For instance, a judge that has to make a decision that needs help. A lot of times judges have even ordered polygraph tests before pre-sentencing polygraph examinations. So you can't just say it's kept out. Most of the good that's done by polygraph is done at the level of the district attorney level. In other words, where they have had the suspect examined to see if they should even file charges. And there is extensive use of that throughout the entire country.
How frequently might a prosecutor who uses polygraph information dismiss charges or proceed based on the outcome of the polygraph?
Well, I would estimate quite often just talking to the people that come from the various departments. Because they trust the polygraph. They know it's had good success in the past, and they don't spend a lot of investigative time and money and so forth on a subject that passes the polygraph test.
Well, is there a kind of individual, Cleve, and I've heard this from a lot of people over the years, the kind of individual who virtually believes their own lies? I know that's tough to grasp, but, I'm told there are people who are that way. Is that the kind of person who...
Well, if a person truly believes the lie they're telling, there's no fear of detection. Therefore, the polygraph is not going to be effective in catching them.
So obviously there should have been or should be a study to find out if there really are those kind of people. Are there?
Well, I think there are more habitual liars than there are psychopathic liars.
But a psychopathic liar?
Yeah, it's pretty hard to find who they are in order to do any kind of research.
Well, I guess that's true, isn't it?
Right.
Advertise in the paper for psychopathic liars. We've got some testing we'd like to do on you.
Yes,
no,
they don't really come forward.
I never thought about that.
I've jokingly said, well, we have to get a psychopathic polygraph examiner to run them.
Anyway, Cleve, I'm so fascinated by all of this. I really am. Does it mean, should we be concluding that plants really do think, or should we, even if we accept this experimentation as real, should we still relegate it to a very, very low, insignificant level of operation at the cosmic level? I mean, in other words, there's no. Listening to Cleve long enough, you know, you're going to not even break open an egg and eat breakfast anymore, right? Because it's going to scream.
Well, obviously there's memory because plants do adapt, so there has to be an equivalent of memory so that they don't react additionally.
Some kind of
memory. And there's a discrimination. You can hook up several plants simultaneously and focus on only one of the three, and that's the only one that reacts. So there are a number of things that are rather interesting that are characteristics that ordinarily one would not attribute to a plant.
You wouldn't go so far as to say sentience of any sort, would you?
Oh, sure I would.
Oh, you would?
Absolutely.
Oh, sentient plants.
Sentience is a key word in my research.
Well, sure it is. Boy, that's a strong word to apply to a plant. And so would it go as far as to say that a plant might like one person and then hate another person?
Well, I'm not sure about the hate, but
strong words.
There have been, for instance, a number of experiments, in fact, that people could do even without instrumentation. They can take three plants, this has been done with bean plants primarily, and have three samples of those plants, and they can lavish one sample with all kinds of love and positive thoughts. They can ignore the middle, and they can
beat up on the other.
Just sort of mentally beat up, not touch it in any way, but have all kinds of negative thoughts, not wishing it well at all. And there's a vast difference in the growth rate of these over a period of time.
I hope your stems rot and your leaves turn brown. That kind of stuff, you mean?
Yeah, in fact, there was a Reverend Franklin Lauer that wrote a book once on the power of prayer on plants. And it wasn't just the prayer that did it, but it was the attention in fact, there was a documentary that I participated in, the Nova show.
Yes.
The green, it's called The Green Machine. And they put about 20 minutes on my research, but then they also had his segment in there, and they were very paranoid about any cheating, so they had a big aquarium that was closed where no one could breathe on the plants and so forth and so on, and they each had the same attention, and the only thing that was different, that he sat outside this aquarium, and again, he went through this process of the back of his hand to the one plant, just mentally speaking, not touching it, and ignoring the middle one, and casting love and affection toward the other.
And the results?
There was a vast difference, and this is all very well controlled and showed on the TV show.
All right, hold tight, Cleve. We'll be right back. All right, once again, Cleve Backster. Cleve, welcome back.
Thank you.
Before we leave the whole lie detector area, if we even do, we've met people on this show. People have made claims about things they've seen and, stuff like that, and for example, some of them have failed, or their first lie detector test has been declared to be inconclusive. So, if generally our reactions are, I don't know. I guess I'm asking, can we sit in a place all hooked up and manufacture a series of reactions in our head that, although not showing physically, have the needles jumping all over the place to the point where, a readable reaction is not possible?
Well, I'll tell you, people have tried the biofeedback, and that doesn't work very well because there's a time delay before they can actually create any changes in the rate of the heart or blood pressure.
Right.
And the entire theory of the polygraph technique that I've introduced into the field involves a focusing of psychological set or prioritizing, because within the structure of the polygraph test, we actually build in a question where they will be telling a minor lie.
I see.
And the only person that has the luxury to focus on that, because these involve character evaluation type questions that they would like to look good on, if, that is, they're not lying to the big one. If they're telling the truth to the serious question, like, did you fire that shot causing the death of so-and-so? And then we ask the question about, during the first 18 years of your life, did you ever hurt somebody who truly loved and trusted you? They will focus on, if they're lying to that big question, they'll focus on that and float right through the small lie. On the other hand, if they're telling the truth to the serious question, they will float through that and hit on this minor lie because they want to look good character-wise. And so this is the whole basis of the numerical evaluation of polygraph charts. If they have the luxury to focus on these small, innocuous attempted deception, that gives them plus points. On the other hand, if they show a strong reaction to the relevant question, that gives them minus points. And then we have numerical cutoffs, et cetera, that allow us to know when we have conclusive deception or truth or inconclusive in between if it doesn't make either one of the cutoffs.
All right. Rick in Gainesville, Florida asks, hey, Art, ask what he thinks of Kirlian photography. In Forresty's school, his book was considered bogus by the faculty. Any formal concurrence in respected journals at all? Sentience in plants? He's kind of stretching the definition.
Well, now, was the second item you mentioned about Kirlian photography or about my stuff?
Well, that was the first one, actually. In other words, that, for example, is pretty controversial, right?
Well, Kirlian photography, I've had people in my lab that have attempted that, where they cut out part of the plant and
yes,
and then they use a kind of Tesla coil arrangement where it sparks and shows up. And I believe it was Thelma Moss, I believe it was, in Los Angeles, at the university there, that did a lot of work on that. And I think the thing they had to be careful of is there wasn't some kind of contamination from where the whole leaf did rest on the, on a plate. And so I'm not an expert in that, but I've always showed interest in it. But
all right, and his final complaint was about sentience. That is a very strong word, sentience in plants.
Yes.
You did jump to that word and said no, it's right.
No, so in fact, we almost had that as a subtitle for the book, but instead of biocommunication with plants, living foods, and human cells, we were going to use the word sentient, and we were not that sure it would be so meaningful to a lot of people. Because it is a profound word, but we certainly evaluated it carefully and felt it safe to use.
So a lot of people you feel might have passed it by because they didn't know what sentience
Well, they may not be, clearly understand what sentience is. Yeah.
Well, that's worth part of a show all by itself, but we won't do that. All right. So there's a picture on the website, our website, of these two sets of plants, which is incredibly striking. And, the Fate magazine stuff, showing the photograph of one plant having, what is it?
Was this the work of Dorothy Rotalik on music and plants?
Yes.
Yes, I heard that was on your website.
it is. And one of these plants is being, just nice classical music, and the other one has acid rock. And the one with acid rock, the plants are bent over, they're brown, they're dying, they're in severe plant distress. Well,
Dorothy Rotalik that started all this music and plants was a friend of mine. She passed away several years ago, but in fact, I have an unpublished book of hers, a manuscript.
Really?
Her second book.
Really?
And the thing that I used to, my only complaint with her is that they really had to double blind the experiment to where the consciousness of the researcher didn't contaminate the experiment, because if you have a bunch of people running that experiment that hate classical music, it may not be the music that bothers the plant. It may be the negative attitude of the experimenter.
Well, that could be. It could be. So they did not have those?
Well, she never did have a chance to do a follow-up of that before she passed away. But I mean that would be my only criticism. But she was playing. Well, classical music, I guess it would be sitar and so forth, some of the instruments that were more classical.
Well, what do you believe? I mean, if the experiment was done in an absolutely pristine manner, and would you think we would still get these results?
I don't know. These would have to be sound chambers that were, where the experimenter didn't even know the kind of music that was being played at the time. It would have to be run by a programmer and automated. That would be the only way you'd get to the bottom of that.
All right. All right, now we're going to stumble into one that just blows me away. Yogurt. Yogurt bacteria. Is yogurt bacteria honestly sentient? It says here it can prioritize. Now, this is really getting down the street, Cleve. Yogurt bacteria.
The yogurt bacteria, I found sort of accidentally back in New York when I worked late at night, and a lot of times I'd forget to eat dinner the night before and didn't want to go out too early the next morning in the Times Square area. I had a bunch of yogurt containers with yogurt in the refrigerator in the lab.
Yes.
And this particular time when I had a tone generator hooked to a plant, just doing long-term monitoring,
Right.
because, again, to save the chart paper and not always having to be looking at the meter.
Sure.
And I took a container of yogurt out, and I stuck the spoon to the bottom of the yogurt to stir up the strawberry jam.
Yes.
And the tone generator just went crazy in the next room.
Oh.
So this told me that something was going on, and the only thing that had changed was I started to stir the jam from the bottom of the yogurt up. And I had no idea at that time that there were live, living bacteria in yogurt. There are two friendly kinds of bacteria.
There are.
In commercial yogurt.
Oh, yes.
And so I got my books out on dairy bacteriology and so forth, and I figured, well, there's got to be a way that I can electrode the yogurt.
Unless I'm wrong, Cleve, I believe that when a doctor finishes giving you a regime of very strong antibiotics of some sort, that they then recommend many times that you eat yogurt to recolonize the important bacteria in your stomach.
And that's interesting, because that means that the bacteria has a capability of transmuting into another form of bacteria.
Apparently so, yes.
Yeah, because I've heard that also, because when you're on antibiotic, that's going to kill the yogurt, because that is live bacteria.
Exactly.
But anyway, when I heard this, I figured out a way to fill a little 5-milliliter test tube with the yogurt, using a little stem and filling from the bottom up, and then putting the gold wire electrodes in the yogurt.
Yes.
And I've got hundreds of hours of monitoring where everyone that would visit the lab, I would use the sample of yogurt to monitor the events going on in the area. In the area, then I would use split screen technology where I'd have one camera on the audience or the group that was visiting, and then the other camera over the chart drive.
Cleve, one quick question.
Yes.
Did your friends and family ever think that you were losing your mind?
I'm not sure. Most of them have passed away before they had a chance to know about this. I have one living relative, an 85-year-old sister.
What's Cleve doing now? Well, he's testing the reaction and prioritization of some yogurt we've got here.
Well, yogurt is a fantastic sensitive monitor of human consciousness. That I am very certain of. When two people are debating with each other,
yes.
When one has the idea of something they want to say to score against the other,
yes.
Just the imagery coming to the mind will create the reaction, and the words come out from the person after.
So then what CBS should do from now on, next presidential debate, in fact, would be to have a monitor and some yogurt. And just while the debate's going on, just monitor the yogurt. Let the yogurt decide.
That would be very interesting. The yogurt would at least show, we won't get that involved in the politics. All my yogurt is non-political. Listen,
all right. How to prioritize? Let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, prioritizing is the equivalent of the focus of psychological set with humans. In other words, if one thing is going on that's more important, the cells will focus on that at the expense of the other, where they ordinarily would show to the other.
Gotcha,
I had an example in the book on that where I had the American Polygraph Association was visiting San Diego, and I hosted a visit to my lab where several hundred of them were crowded in this lab here in San Diego. And I thought, well, this is going to be just totally chaotic, because I always felt that I needed to have very controlled laboratory environment for something to show. Mm-hmm. But before they got so crowded I couldn't even move around the lab, I balanced in a test tube of yogurt and just let it run, and to show that at least there's some squiggles and wiggles on the tracing it was tied into something I had hooked up. And I thought, well, I wonder if I can get some kind of a reaction out of this if I take the syringe that I used to fill this test tube still had some yogurt in it, and I was about 15 feet away from the electroded sample, and I squirted some of the balance of that yogurt from the syringe into a mixed drink. It was a vodka and tonic, the tail end of the vodka and tonic drink.
Oh,
and there was just a huge reaction from the electroded sample. And this, again, showed that despite the chaos that was going on with all of the polygraph examiners, their wives and kids that were visiting the lab, that the yogurt was still able to tune in to another sample that came from the same source, and when something happened to that other sample, showed reaction at a distance.
Oh, my God, I've been dumped in a drink.
Yeah, so this is what I call prioritizing.
Well, no, I see what you mean, though, and I see what the control was there. That's really, really interesting. Cleve, what should if all of this is true, then what does it mean in terms of how we should prioritize or treat our environment, meaning plants and animals and all things around us that we didn't think had the kind of connection that you're saying things do have?
Well, I've always been interested in the Gaia hypothesis. Are you familiar with that?
Go ahead through it.
And James Lovelock in England is the one that sort of fosters that, and Lynn Margolis over here. And Lynn Margolis was married to Carl Sagan for about, 10 years, which I have to give her a lot of credit.
For staying with him for 10 years?
Yes. But anyway, the Gaia hypothesis related to the world being one great big living entity, and it had self-regulating capability. And, of course, it had to have communication to have that kind of self-regulation.
That's right.
And so I believe, again, I believe very much in that concept, and I think we have to be far more careful in how we handle the environment. This business of somebody saying, well, if you cut down the trees, you don't have to worry about forest fires, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So then we would have to really modify the way we think about it. Let me go even a little further. Now, you've done plants. What about what we think of as inanimate objects? If, I don't know, my wood desk, other things around us that are made up in a certain molecular way, maybe it's crazy, but it's not that much crazier than asking about plants.
No, I don't think it is. I think that once we were to find a way to be able to properly electrode these so-called inanimates, that we would see that there is something going on there. The closest I've been able to come to that is to take some filings of wood and even metal and so forth, and sprinkle them into some agar-agar compound, and then agar-agar or agar-agar, whichever you want to call it, will firm up as a gel. And by taking a plug of that agar-agar and put electrodes on each side, I'm able to get little wiggly lines showing that something is coming out of that, but I don't get the real meaningful free-flowing tracings that I get when I'm hooking up biological material.
Okay, let me throw this one at you, Cleve. Right now, there are a lot of people concerned about Mount St. Helens.
Yes.
A volcano's a big deal.
Right.
And it has the potential to, I don't know, if it goes off the wrong way, wipe out a lot of land and trees and people and everything around it, just kaboom.
It did that once.
It sure did. Now, I'm not saying it's going to do it again, but I would think, I'm talking to friends who have animals like dogs in the area, behaving very, very, very strangely in that area right now. And I wonder if something as big from our Earth as a volcanic eruption with all the pressures going on under the Earth, well, gee, you would think that if you had electrodes hooked up to some plants and trees in the area, they'd just be going berserko. I
would be very interested in having an opportunity to do that, like the big redwoods and so forth up in California.
Absolutely.
I know that I think this ties in a little bit to some of the material that is done by Rupert Sheldrake. I know you had him on your show.
You betcha.
And I think that I'm more informed of his research than perhaps he was of mine, so I'm not sure. I'm not complaining, but he didn't show too much insight when it came up.
Well, he should indeed be reading about it.
Yes. So I admire his work, though. His work, of course, with the dog, the dog going to the door when the owner decided to come home from wherever the owner was.
It's absolutely all connected, Cleve.
That's fascinating.
It's all connected. We're talking about the same thing.
Absolutely.
In all these different areas. There's no question about it, and I would think that you two researchers would get together and have a lot to share.
Well, I'm going over to London this Thursday, in fact. There's they call it the Living the Field Conference 2004.
Oh.
And there are going to be a bunch of people. Ed Mitchell's going to be over there, the astronaut.
Oh, yes.
And Dr. Raymond Moody, who's I'm not sure you've had some of these people.
I know all of them. I've had them all
Stan
on.
Krippner's and others.
Yes.
Stanley Krippner's. And there are a whole bunch of people who are going to be over there. And they have on their little promotion thing, they have Living the Field Conference 2004. A once-in-a-lifetime chance to see the icons of consciousness research. I'm thrilled.
That's what
I'm put in such good company.
Well, you are an icon, and they are icons indeed of consciousness research, which I think someday will be known to be the most powerful force in the universe. Someday. Mark my words. By the time they discover it, I'll be long gone, but mark them anyway. Did you know that in the last, rather minor eruption of Mount St. Helens, a lot of the seismographic equipment, sensors and such at the top got blown to smithereens, so they're now gone. And staying with that theme for a second, my wife said during the break, what if you were monitoring all the redwoods all the way around Mount St. Helens? I wonder if the redwoods, number one, would act like a seismograph, and number two, if the trees, for example, might understand which side of the mountain was going to blow out.
This is really a good thought, because my aim is just to be able to electrode one of those redwoods. But once we worked out the technology and we had it telemetered back to a central location,
yes,
and we had different trees located at various locations, I think that could turn out to be very interesting. Because, those trees, some of them are, hundreds and hundreds of years old.
Absolutely.
They're a lot smarter than probably most of the humans.
Well, let's ask, Cleve, do you believe that the trees, if you had an arrangement, I mean, I'm asking you to guess now, to hypothesize, but that you would be able to, in the end, find out that you had detected from the trees an understanding of which side was about to blow?
Well, I would certainly think it's possible. As far out as some of my stuff seems, that's a lot closer in.
Yeah, it is. And you think a tree on the side of a volcano would have a very big investment in what's about to happen. Major things, rumblings under the earth, constant earthquakes and all this. I mean, that's big time.
Absolutely. There were acres of trees flattened by that last eruption.
Yes. Yes, so perhaps some setups would be valuable. I'm surprised USGS hasn't contacted you.
I think they go to their scientific advisors, and they don't get any further than that when they're interested in this.
Cleve, let's say somebody at home right now, and there are a lot of technical types of people who listen to this program.
Right.
And I'm kind of techie myself. What instruments could we use at home, and I don't mean the average person, but somebody with some test instruments, voltometers and scopes or whatever they might have lying around. A lot of people have that kind of stuff. Could they do something? If so, what do they do? How do they do it?
Well, one of the things I might mention, that people can get quite a bit of information if they tap into our website at primaryperception.com.
Okay.
I think that's listed in your indexing of the shows.
That's right. We have a link to it for now, but that'll be gone. So it's primaryperception.com. Perception.com.
And it's a very active website. And Francie Prouse, my editor and publisher of the book, Primary Perception, does a lot of work on that. And she has a newsletter and all kinds of bioweb organizations and so forth. Somebody who's really interested can get more involved.
That said, give me outline an experiment I could try at home.
Well, again, your initial question was about the instrumentation, and this is the problem. It's so frustrating because we get so many inquiries saying, how can I get a hold of instrumentation? Because they don't, any good EEG type equipment will show this. But again, who has EEG type equipment laying around?
Right, exactly
and,
right.
Strangely enough, when I graduated from the galvanic skin response testing of plants to what the Russians did right away in replicating my work, they went right to EEG type equipment. Now, the difference between this, one is supposed to measure resistance, and the EEG equipment does a high degree of magnification of very subtle signals that come out of the, in this case, the plant. And the Scientology people that have the so-called E-meter.
Yes.
Well, that E-meter is a very sensitive indicator if you want to get some early work by hooking that to each side of a leaf.
What is that technically?
It's a galvanic skin response, very sensitive galvanic skin response.
But basically, it's measuring resistance, right?
Well, supposedly measuring resistance, yes. I challenge a little bit the basic concept of resistance, because if you had let's say, a meter, and you were trying to figure out the resistance in the circuit, you wouldn't want any other sources of electricity in the pathway other than what you're sending through.
Right.
And yet, with when you're measuring plants or even humans, why there are thousands of sources of electricity. Every cell has the capability of discharging electricity. So I think that the GSR probably is accidentally picking up the cellular discharge, and when that is added to whatever is being placed through, the signal you're placing through ordinarily to measure resistance, it only appears that there's a drop in resistance. But it really could be also that it's picking up electrical charge on the way.
So to properly do this requires an EEG?
Well, EEG would be the very best way to handle it, yes.
But is there any little experiment, somebody with a voltometer, is there some way at home?
Well, when you talk about an ohmmeter, you're not getting the kind of sensitivity you would need to do this.
Okay.
Because these are it's a high magnification of very, very subtle signals. Now, most of the work is microvolt range.
Got it.
And with eggs, though, the signals are actually millivolt range.
Are they really?
Yes.
Now that's intriguing,
yes.
right there. With higher with eggs, why?
Well, I don't know. It's a pretty powerful signal. When you look in the primary perception book, you'll see some samples of when I first hooked up eggs. There's all kinds of cyclic activity going on inside the egg, aside from the primary perception capability.
Okay, so when we make our breakfast in the morning, when we crack the egg into the bowl or into the pan, is it screaming?
Well, my experience has been when somehow you're sort of threatening the well-being, in this case of the egg.
Yes.
If you think in terms as you do it, if you think, well, I'm going to break this egg, I think the egg goes into a protective stance. It's very similar to a state of shock, but when you do it without thinking and without any pre-imaging of what you're going to do,
then it never knows what's coming.
Yeah, one of the experiments that I did. In fact, I even have pictures of it, the charts in the book. Is one time I had forgotten to eat dinner the night before, and it was too early to go out in Times Square, and so I had all of these eggs on hand that I was doing research with, and I thought, I'm not going to starve to death with all these eggs. So I said, but I got to do a scientific experiment as part of it. So one of the eggs was electroded to the recording equipment.
Yes.
And it was the egg was placed in a lead-shielded box and so forth. I took all the precautions. And that was egg number 1. Now, egg number 2 and 3, I dropped into a pan of boiling water on a hot plate in the lab. And you can see that when I dropped those 2 eggs in about 3 seconds apart, you can see the large reactions on the chart that was being made at the time from the other egg that was not being in any way directly disturbed.
So there was egg empathy.
Oh, yes. And so one of the things I think that with people that have been taught to say blessings before consuming foods, I think that this is...
Well, isn't that just scaring the food?
Well, it's not scaring the food, it's notifying the food and allowing it to go into this defensive posture to where it doesn't feel the pain.
Well,
I think that's the very basis, very likely, of saying blessings.
But still, it's the long kiss goodbye. I mean, it's notification that, hey, jig is up.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that degree of insensitivity is I under the bacteria section in the book, I have an example of bacteria communicating with another kind of bacteria. And this was done at my first lab location here in San Diego. It involved a long one-story wooden building, and in order not to have to keep running up to the front of the building where I had the chart recording equipment, I put pip switches down, one in each room, all the way down the length of this complex of rooms. And what I would do is push the switch when I was doing various things, and that would automatically mark the chart up in the front of the lab.
Right.
And when I did this, and then I started to transfer the information about what was going on when I hit the switch, I found some amazing things. I had a Siamese cat at the time that got hooked on chicken, and wouldn't eat anything else. At least the cat had convinced me that it wouldn't eat anything else.
Oh no, it can happen.
So my partner's wife would roast the chicken and send in the chicken with my partner in the polygraph school, and I'd pull off a little of this roasted chicken each day to feed the cat, and I would put it under a heating lamp. And in this particular occasion, when I disturbed after the chicken carcass got pretty old after being in the refrigerator a number of days, pulling off some of the chicken each day, there was a bacterial buildup on the chicken, and I was disturbing this bacteria when I pulled chunks of it off, and the yogurt that was being tested, another kind of bacteria up in the front room, was showing this very, very dramatically. And the charts on that are in the book, and then you'll see that when I put after I got done disturbing the bacteria on the surface of this chicken, I put it under the heating lamp, and then there was another big surge of reactivity that showed up on the yogurt at the other end of the lab. And
all of this means so much, Cleve, but it's so incredible, and it means so much, but we don't know what, do we?
Well, it means that for instance, plants are very much attuned to all kinds of things, all kinds of life forms in the immediate environment. One time I went up to Yale to give a talk. The linguistics department had invited me up to talk on the research, and I took a polygraph up with me. And after my talk, I had some of the graduate students come up to the second floor of this building where they billeted the guest instructors, and I let them hook up a leaf, and bounce it in on the polygraph on the galvanic skin response. And they didn't have a plant available, but the buildings are covered with the leaves of ivy. The Ivy Institution gets its name that way.
Yes.
So they plucked the leaf, brought it in, bounced it in on the polygraph, and then I said, well, do you have any insects where we can try to show some interaction between the insect and the plant, because I've noticed that so often in my lab. They said, well, technically it's not an insect, but we have loads of spiders here in New Haven. So they went to the corner, up in the corner of one of the rooms, and got this spider. They put the spider on the table, and when they surrounded the spider with their hands and didn't allow it to escape, when they took their hands away and the spider made up its mind to make a run for it, there was a huge reaction on the plant just prior to the spider taking off. And they did that several times in a row. Then one of them said, well, let's let the spider go down this carpeted staircase going down to the first floor, and then we'll send another student down to see if they can find it in this darkened hallway. And then you talk about an interesting exercise for these graduate students at a prestigious university like Yale. One of them is going down saying, I don't see it yet, and the other one is, well, the line up here is pretty straight on the leaf. And then the person says, don't see it yet. And then, well, I'm getting a little reaction up here. Then, oh, I see it. And then when the person found the spider, there's a huge reaction on the polygraph up at the top of the stairs.
All right. Jason in Chandler, North Carolina, writes in an email, he sent before the show, he says, for instance, when insects chew a tomato plant's leaves, genetic signals, he says, are triggered that tell the plant to release chemicals such as methyl jasmonate. Now, I wonder if that's true across the board, and could that be what's being measured in that case? In other words, there is a reaction, a chemical reaction that's
but here you
beginning,
have something
right?
that's really is disturbing. For instance, if you had, let's say, that leaf electrode at the very time that this was going on,
yes,
there would be an alternate explanation of why you may be getting disturbances. But there's some several years back, there was a good bit of publicity about groves of trees, where if the groves of trees at one location got the blight, the grove of trees over the hills someplace put up their defense mechanisms against that blight even before it got there.
Huh.
And of course, they were so sure it had to be some kind of a chemical messenger that caused this, and they never could identify it. But it's very easily explainable by the primary perception idea.
So you're saying this has been noticed then totally independently of the work you do in for example, fields where you just said there's
yes.
a notification that goes on. So this is all independent of your work.
Yes, I mean, they may not have the same explanation. In fact, they may be still looking for explanations that could be easily...
Yeah, they're hunting for a chemical messenger, right?
Yes, they're looking for more of a conventional kind of signal. And as I understand it, the only way they were at least planning to try to get to the bottom of this is to have two enclosed chambers and have something in one chamber that would be equivalent to administering the blight to some plants, and then have a closed, a closed connection over to the other chamber with filters on it to try to filter out what this chemical messenger would be.
Yeah.
And I never heard any results of that, so I don't think they had any success.
Well, it's sure. Maybe they need to put matters into your hands. I don't know. Listen, going back to the egg for a second.
Yes.
So if I have this straight then, if I don't think two things about it, I mean, it's just an automatic thing. I go in, I'm hungry, I crack eggs and make breakfast. And I don't even think two things about it. Well, then that egg isn't going to freak out at all because it's never going to see it coming. Is that true, or are you...
No, I think because it doesn't see it coming is when you're going to get the reaction.
Oh.
See? In other words, but where it somehow has a notification through your imagery of what you're going to do, then it goes into this defensive stance that's very similar to feigning. It takes about 20 minutes for it to come back. After I did that initial observation of the egg that I mentioned, where I dropped the eggs for breakfast into the boiling water while I was testing one, I thought, golly, this should be a good repeatable experiment. So I spent about, I think, 2 weeks at least making some automation equipment. I had an old turntable off of a phonograph.
Yes. And
it still was on this roller bearing idea. It would rotate very easily.
Sure.
And then I put some like corn plasters on it so the eggs wouldn't roll off, and I could get about 10 eggs all the way around this thing. And then I had it worked out where this is before you can do it easily with computers now, but at 6, 7, and 8 minute intervals, the egg would the turntable would turn, a little mechanical boot would kick the egg down a trough, trip a switch, and go into a deep fry of boiling water. and I thought, wow, I should be able to get lots of repeatable data. I got 10 eggs that are going to be doing this. So I put time delay switches on it, and I did everything where I could leave the lab. And the interesting part is when I came back, I would have, when the first egg went down the chute, I would have a large reaction. And then all the other eggs just flatlined. In other words,
they fainted.
They were talking to each other. When the first one went down, that was it. The signal went out. So I had about 10 hard-boiled eggs, but one reaction when the first egg went down.
So then the kindest thing one can do for an egg is to tell it what's coming, give it a chance to pass out, and then get its little head cracked, right?
Right, that's it. The same way with the ingestion of food. The fact that you're going to eat the food, and you're thankful for the source of the food, and so on.
Oh, yes.
The very content of the blessing idea.
Send it into shock, and then mercifully turn it into an omelet or whatever.
I had one of these e-meters on a plane once, and because I was going to give a talk someplace, and so while I was sitting in the seat, I took the e-meter out just before they were going to serve a meal. That's back when they served some meals on planes.
Yeah, no kidding.
And this poor guy that was caught on the inside window, he couldn't get away. I pulled out and put this e-meter on the tray, and then when they served the salad, I said, let me put some lettuce in between these electrodes, and I bounced in the lettuce, and the thing showed a little free-flowing.
I'll tell you what, right now, Cleve, you can't do that on an airplane today, and if you
I wouldn't dare.
You're going to meet the sky marshal, and you're going to go away and talk to
Absolutely, I'd be in deep trouble. But anyway, I told the person, I said, now watch, when the people start eating their salads that are being served them, watch what happens. And so the needle froze, it flatlined. Then I said, well, now wait till they pick the trays up again, and you'll see it come back to life. And it came back to life again. And this poor guy is caught. You know, he's a captive audience.
Well, how did he come away?
I'm not sure.
Really? Well, you see, I'm not sure how I'm coming away from this myself. I'm curious. In the Backster household, Cleve, you know, like when you serve up dinner, you don't serve up the salad with a screaming meter attached to it, do you?
No, I don't.
All right, good. I'd like to allow the audience to ask questions. If you know, your family must have thought you strange for a while, though, huh?
Well, probably. I know that when my parents, when I lived back in New Jersey, they gave me money to take a train from New Jersey down to Texas, at Texas University. I had been watching too many Westerns, I think. When I went down to New York, they had a little train that went from the middle of northern New Jersey to Hoboken, and then you took a ferry across to one of the big train stations. And I thought, well, this isn't going to be any fun. So I took the train money and I went up in the Bronx and I put a down payment on a motorcycle, which I'd never been on in my life. And they taught me how to you know, run the thing on one of their training three-wheelers.
Yes.
And then they put me on the two-wheeler after they took my money for the down payment, pushed me out over Pulaski Skyway. And by the time I got down to Texas, I really knew how to ride a motorcycle. My parents didn't know about that for several years.
I see. And apparently a lot of other things.
Yeah, there's a whole string of things.
First-time caller line. You're on the air with Cleve Backster. Good morning.
Good morning. I don't have a question. I just have a piece of information to offer as an extension of the research that Mr. Backster has already uncovered.
What would that be?
I believe it was Ed Mitchell, if not him, one of the astronauts in the time of the early orbiting experiments that were going on. One of them wrote a book about all of this kind of thing. It may have been Ed Mitchell.
It was Ed Mitchell.
And in it, he describes that cells were put into orbit from some origin on a person or something on Earth, and whenever anything was done to the original cells on Earth, they registered the reaction in space. Was
this a NASA authorized experiment?
No, it was something he did on his own.
On his own, okay.
Yeah.
Boy, I'll tell you, if that's true, then that means Ed Mitchell was on to everything we're talking about.
Yes.
Way before a lot of people.
Yes, if you were to get his book, you'd find it fascinating because it goes a step beyond what they were doing with mere space orbiting. He's interested in all forms of metaphysical activity.
Okay,
Ed Mitchell is going to be at the conference I'm going to be attending this Thursday.
I realize
over in London.
Yeah, there you are.
You might want to check with him on that.
Well, I'm sure that Ed probably will talk about that as part of what he talks about. You think, Cleve?
Well, I'm not sure. The information I was aware of is I think he was using the Rhine Zinner cards or something with the waves and the squares and the and doing some experiments when he was on his space trip with somebody on Earth. I hadn't heard about the cell stuff, so that fascinates me, and I'm going to. That
would be something you'd want to really ask about, because that would mean he was on to this awfully early.
Absolutely.
All right, Wildcard Line, you're on the air with Cleve Backster. Hi.
Hi, this is Larry in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Yo.
I had two quick questions. The first one is, do you think that household mole, in any way has the same type of communication and feelings, and perhaps even a sinister one in ganging up on people?
That's not such a bad question, really. Mold is an interesting organism, isn't it, Cleve?
Well, mold you should be able to test mold. In other words, if you put a collection of it in a test tube, I feel very certain you're going to get meaningful signals, because we get that from yeast, we get it from bacteria, from the an aquarium, just by taking a sample of the gravel in the bottom of an aquarium, which has lots and lots of bacteria on it. Putting electrodes in that test tube of gravel, we can get reactions when we pipe it into the EEG of events going on inside the aquarium, one fish chasing another, and so forth. So I would suspect very strongly that mold would be very reactive.
It seems the most sinister of everything that would drive somebody out of a house and make them sick on the way out.
Well, listen, once you get, I'm not sure that the mold is going to be that spiteful, but I don't know either.
The other question was, if you're out there having to cut your hedges and trimming trees and stuff like that, is there an equivalent of saying grace before you have to take an arm?
Before you commit virtual genocide?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm told by people that have looked into this that as long as you envision that you're doing this for the good of the lawn, the overall good, there's not a problem. In other words, it's understandable, apparently, that the trimming of the hedge and the lawn, et cetera, is for the overall good.
Are you sure this isn't, you're not just saying this part of it to make us all feel better about what we'd feel otherwise?
Well, I know that the women have been talking to plants for years.
Oh, yes,
and,
of course.
And the men sort of sneak out at night and talk to their tomatoes and so forth to make them grow better than the neighbor's tomatoes. So I've just heard hundreds of anecdotal stuff that come from these people.
I wonder how many men secretly go out and talk to their tomatoes.
Yeah, sometimes they don't admit it. You know, it's interesting that the years that I've been doing this research, I have scientists come up all the time and say, you know, the work you did back in the 60s and early 70s back in New York really changed their lives.
Huh.
And of course, it isn't automatic that they're going to feel that they can travel with this information because it could hurt them. In other words, on grant requests and so forth, if it sounds like they're a little too far out. But how it affected them personally are the stories that I get from it.
Well, so you need some grant money. Who would normally, for what you're doing, possibly contribute grant money?
Well, I've been wondering about that for a long time. I've had some modest grants given me, but most all of it's been self-funding now. I just have been dumping my own money in this for years. And also, all the proceeds from this book, Primary Perception, goes to further research.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, and then of course you've got your lie detector work that you do as well.
Yes, I jokingly say that my research with biocommunication is built on lies, but it's the lies that people tell and get tested on that pay the bill.
Yeah, very good point, very good line. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Cleve Backster. Hi.
Yeah, this is Bernard in Moorhead, Minnesota.
Yes, sir.
And I'm listening to you at a K-Fire in North Dakota there.
Way to go.
And he was talking about talking to the plants and doing all these tests and stuff. Well, I had a couple plants that I picked up, one in a garage sale and one at work, and they were both dead. I just barely living, and I did the same thing. I took it home, babied it, fed it, watered it, talked to it, played music for it, and they both came back to life, So
I can see that. I've heard a lot of stories similar to that.
Yeah.
But also, I've heard stories about people that have threatened the plant. If they didn't do better, they're going to throw it out. And
exactly. That's what I used to tell the tree.
Wait a minute. Oh. Did that get action if they Cleve?
Yes.
It did?
Oh, absolutely.
In other words, get off your dying
That's right.
Yeah, if you don't start living, I'm going to take you to the dump.
Yeah, I've had a number of people tell me experiences. Yeah, absolutely. You got to get down to earth with them.
Oh, gee, Cleve.
Another interesting thing too. People have told me that they have bad experiences because when they go traveling abroad and something of that nature, or gone for any length of time, that they have people come in to water their plants.
Sure.
And they give them plenty of good care, but the plants don't do well. And when they come back, they find them in pretty bad shape, even though the care has been okay. And I said, well, all you need to do is take photographs of those plants with you, and then wherever you are, just look at those photographs several times a day and give positive thought toward them. And you're going to find that the plants, you're tuned right into them, and they're going to do much better.
Remote plant nurturing.
Yes, absolutely. And I've had some good results from those suggestions.
Okay, so then all of this then is also tied, Cleve, into the prayer, isn't it? They've really done some amazing studies, as you well know, about things prayed for, things not prayed for. It's repeatable. It happens again and again and again and again. It's got to have meaning.
Right. I feel certain of that. It's just unhandy information for some scientific disciplines, and they're a little slow to pick up on it. and yet there's so much more they could do, how they could expand their research if they would just grasp on this concept of the biocommunication as far as biology is concerned. You know, there's a field, and I have a book on their research, and they call themselves, well, it's electrophysiology. Now, the electrophysiologists are ones that are hooking up instrumentation for all kinds of conventional reasons to life forms. Now, they have to be sweeping so much stuff under the rug, you know, because there's no way they could be missing this with the instrumentation they're using.
So what are they doing? Virtually
they
just...
certainly don't bring it up, but it just makes me think that, you know, they're using EEG equipment for the conventional, the brain waves and all kinds of things.
So
and,
then they're attributing it to what?
Well, they use it in regard to event-related brain potentials, they call it.
Yes.
And they're trying to see if there are certain parts of the brain that relate to memory, et cetera, and so forth. But they have to be seeing the things that they're discarding as artifacts have to be the very things that I'm seeing all the time.
All right. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Cleve Backster. Good morning.
I'm sorry?
I said you're on the air and good morning. Both of those have, well, one has meaning anyway. You're on the air.
Yeah, it's a good show you got on tonight, and I'd like to ask your guest a question.
Fire away.
Do you possibly think this might be some type of evidence or could lead to some type of evidence to the concept of omnipresent intelligence within the universe that's operating outside of the time-space continuum and being segregated within it? And I'll listen to the answer off the air.
All right. In other words, God.
Well, in a way, you're talking about a universal intelligence, and you're probably talking about something that goes far beyond, you know, this planet, which we're all wrapped up in. But this could be just one minor place, the funny farm of the universe or something. We don't know where God's hanging out. This concept of omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence, the three characteristics that are attributes of God, do and have to involve biocommunication. So I think it ties very much into some kind of, when you think beyond this planet, I think you're probably right that there's a universal kind of intelligence.
First time caller line, you're on the air with Cleve Backster and Art Bell. Good morning.
How you doing?
Doing fine, sir. Where are you?
All right, I'm in Ohio.
Ohio, all right.
Yeah, my name's Bill. And I just wanted to give a little statement and see what you guys might think about it. What I wanted to say was that, you know, aside of all the research and everything, I'm a Christian person, so I believe in God. And I just want to say that, you know, I've always believed that everything on the planet, all of us are all connected, you know, and though an egg might not think like a human does or whatever, that we all are connected in some way or another. So therefore you would have reactions, you know, to each living thing, you know, from another living thing.
All right, well, that's exactly what the program is all about. I guess we're talking about a universal...
Well, you know, Art, on the back of the book you have in front of you,
yes,
you'll see an expansion of Gene Houston and Deepak Chopra where they talk
I
about
see
that very thing.
I see it, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. People should pick this up. Where is your book available now?
Well, you can get it from Amazon.com and also from the website, primaryperception.com.
But the name of the book is Primary
Perception. Yeah.
And so a lot of people are going to be hunting for that.
And this is my one and only book. I've had a lot of stuff written about my
What
work.
finally drove you to writing it?
Well, I just turned 80, and I thought I'd better.
Yes, you're right from that
So this
perspective.
is sort of autobiographical. It goes from the very beginning, and it builds systematically on how, first what made me weird enough to spot this, as far as my background is concerned, and then it goes progressively every step of the way, how one thing led to another. And it lists there is reproduced in the book authentic copies of all the charts concerned, the important charts, the EEG readings and so forth. So
well, it's all here, indeed. And Cleve, you did mention you're 80. Where do you want your research to go so that when you're gone, it's not? Aside from the fact that you've got a book, that's great.
Yes.
But somebody's got to pick up the mantle.
Well, this is one of the things. I have a nonprofit research foundation, which I've had since 1965, in fact. where any donations are tax exempt, but I need to get a significant amount where I can have some kind of a center, because all the material and the charts and the files and the videotapes and so forth, I'm not sure what will happen to them if something happens to me, because there is no plan.
Yes, well, if I were to ask you, which I just did, who would you want this research to go to? What would you be most pleased with?
Well, it would have to be someone that would be interested enough that had an active, either research facility or something of that nature, where you could be sure that all the material you gave to them would be safely stored.
Well, I meant, at an academic research facility at a college level, something like that.
Well, if the college people could really get involved to the point where they would want to do that, it would be a kind of library, a science library type of situation. I'm open to suggestions about that, because I'm starting to think along the lines of wanting to preserve the material that's been accumulated over the years.
Well, not only that, but to continue the research.
Absolutely.
I mean, all of this, if true, and it seems like it really is true, is so important to mankind, it just can't be forgotten. That's all there is to it.
Well, I think that's why I've dedicated my, good bit of my life to that, and a lot of personal finances. I think it's very, very important.
By the way, I really appreciate your signing the book for me. That was really nice.
Okay, no problem.
During all the years that I've been doing this program, Cleve, I've been hearing stories about all of this, and I hate to say it, but it's almost like when you hear it, it's almost at the myth level for a lot of listeners.
Yes.
They think of it as kind of, they're talking about a big myth, plants reacting, thinking, being sentient in some way. Please.
It's no myth. It is no myth. I'm not naive at all, and the evidence that I've, just hundreds of high-quality observations. Many of them are anecdotal, because they don't lend themselves to repeatability to the very same thing.
How have the big important experiments you've done, how has this affected your life? Has it changed your life and the way you regard things and plants and everything?
Well, I'll tell you, when I was raised, again, in northern New Jersey, and my father was the superintendent of a Presbyterian Sunday school for 30 years, and I had to go to Sunday school and church every Sunday to get that wreath and whatever those little dangling bars are that tell how many years you've done that. And I got, I think, up to 14 years in that before I went away to school. And I thought to myself, well, gee whiz, let me take 14 years off to see if it makes any difference, because I was attributing many of the things that I'd learned during those early years just to the power of suggestion. And then I got associated with someone on a trip I made to the West Coast that was very interested. He was from a theosophical family, and the theosophical people are sort of an interface between Eastern philosophy and the West.
Sure.
And we just talked around the clock, and it combined my rather extensive experience with hypnosis with his concept of the teachings of theosophy.
Jason from Chandler, North Carolina, also wrote, he's the fellow who sent me the email, in addition to feeling stimuli, plants can also see other plants. Most plants see red and blue light as well as far red light, which is a part of the spectrum humans can't see because the plants reflect green light and absorb red and blue light. They know they have fewer neighbors when there are fewer red and blue wavelengths in the area. This is why plants grow away from each other, he says. They avoid competition. Cleve, do you think that is true, that they see in a way?
Well, I'm not fully acquainted with that concept, but I think this is a situation where we're using one of the recognizable senses to try to explain how plants do indeed stay away from each other. To me, the primary perception, communication, would probably be, for me, an easier one to understand than the color of the light. I know there's some articles that come out recently about how roots will stay away from each other. The root structure underground.
That's right.
As they approach each other, they can see where the roots will steer clear. By using something like they use for ants, where they have two plates of glass.
That's quite remarkable.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
Betty in Calgary, Canada, says, "Hey, Art, I had a Christmas cactus. You talked about this, Cleve, one that never bloomed for about 6 years. One day I actually said to it, 'Bloom, damn it, or you're going into the garbage.' Well, I had a bloom that year, and every year since."
That's right. You got to lay the law down.
do you honestly believe that? I mean,
I do, because it's not your words; it's the imagery that helps you formulate your words. And even though you may speak them out loud, it's the plant is picking up the imagery, and
thinking of itself in a trash can.
Yeah, I've had a number of people give me examples of that.
Oh, well, I don't know what that says about life. I'm not exactly.
There's another point that I failed to mention, maybe some others too, but how I first discovered the plants were so attuned to human cells, the death of human cells. Back in New York City, the laboratory that I was located in was on the 5th floor of this building, and every other floor of the building there was a restroom, and the men's restroom happened to be right on the other side of the wall from the lab. And ordinarily I did most of my stuff at night, but there would be people who wanted to come by during the daytime.
Yes. And
I would show them how to electrode plants, and I would show them the tracings. And then I would get these huge reactions, and nothing was happening in the lab that would account for that. But then I'd hear the flushing on the other side of the wall. So in chasing that one down, there are human cells that are excreted with body fluid.
I'm not sure you want to chase that one down.
Yeah, well,
plenty of room for exploration here before you get to that.
This was a tip-off, though, that human cells and plants were very much attuned to each other.
Yes. I guess. First-time caller line, your turn with Cleve Backster. Hey.
Howdy there. Fascinating show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I just wondered if he'd read the Celestine Prophecy and some of the research. I'm not sure whether it was fiction, fact-based on fiction, or the reverse, of where they'd have people sitting in the garden on each corner of a garden and concentrating on the plants, and they, vegetable gardens and such, and they grew faster and more nutritious. And then another question was, they did some research, I'm not sure where I read it years ago, where food was cooked with, like you say, as you're thinking about it, with, nutrition for the family or love or whatever. I'm not sure how they measured the nutrition, but it was of a much higher value than food cooked just personal, with, no personal involvement kind of thing.
Okay, Cleve?
Well, it's my understanding of the latter point that when a plant is in somewhat of a shock and unprepared for the things that are going to happen, that there are some excretions that are involved that could alter the taste and perhaps the nutrition of the food concerned.
And his first point that
the first point, the Philistine prophecy, I'm not familiar with that, but that's fascinating. I didn't know about that.
Cleve, the four people who would sit on each side of a garden, causing the vegetables to. I mean, that would be a hell of a job to sit there and think these vegetables along, but that's what he mentioned. Have you ever heard of that?
Well, I hadn't heard of it in conjunction with that particular publication, but if they were to periodically do it and not do it constantly, that would be sufficient.
Okay.
It should work.
Good job if you can get it. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Cleve Backster. Hi.
Hello, my name is Robert. I'd like to share two comments.
All right.
And the first one is how everything is connected. Like everything on the planet is alive at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And well, basically, humans, people are the only animals that, when it came away from the awareness of the planet, like this one living entity, and we're just separating it from it after birth.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm nervous.
Well, that's okay, but I think I know what you're talking about because the humans seem to be the only one out of the loop,
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting way to think of it.
Yeah.
We're the only ones out of the loop.
Because, I think that people, especially people that are psychic, I think when they're capable of handling the material and the information they learn is when they become back into the loop again. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. East of the Rockies, your turn with Cleve Backster. Hi.
Yes, my name is Aaron. I'm listening to you in Huntsville, Alabama. I'm 1230 WBHP.
Yes, sir.
It's an honor to speak with you and to get through.
Thank you.
And just had a quick question for your caller about plants remembering what happens to them.
Yes.
Is this kind of a short-term memory that they would forget later on, or is it more of a long-term memory where maybe their molecular structure, their cells, and there have been altered to always remember for the remainder of their life?
That's a superb question, sir. Cleve, is the memory that they form tested? Can you test it and see how long-term it is?
I would suspect you could do that. I'll tell you what we did as a precaution, though, when I did my initial brine shrimp experiment with the plants, is we had to keep bringing in new sets of plants because the plant would remember that nothing did occur when that signal came from the death of the brine shrimp.
How far have you gone, though, in testing the length of that memory?
I haven't. This is why we really need to get people involved that would be, would really pursue something like that once they understood that this is a vehicle that could be very valuable for research.
Wow. There's really a lot more that can be done with this, isn't there?
Absolutely.
I mean, this is just the bare beginning in a lot of ways. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Cleve Backster. Good morning.
Good morning, Art. How are you?
Just spiffy.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you that your show's the best on the air.
You're kind. Thank you.
And second of all, I wanted to ask Cleve. I wasn't able to hear the first part of the show, so I don't know if you covered this already, but can the plants tell you how or what they want, and if so, how?
Well, now, I would imagine that you could develop a system that would enable the plants to do that. In other words, if you were to make a continuous recording or even a spot check recording of the plants, and had worked out the signals with them as to what they would show. I've had psychics come in my lab back in New York.
Psychics?
Yeah, psychics, and they've worked out a system where two spikes would mean one thing and one spike would mean another, and they were actually able to create some kind of communication with the plants.
That's pretty darn interesting.
Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't think that psychics would fit into that, but
well,
I guess everybody's into everything these days, huh?
Yes, that's true.
I mean, as far as like say they're thirsty, I mean, is there anything, besides their leaves wilting or something like that, or if they need more copper or whatever?
That hasn't been, I don't know of any system that has been done or any research project has been done on that, but I would suspect that it would be possible to do that, where you're letting the plants tell you whether they like one kind of fertilizer better than another, things of that nature.
Do you have any suggestions on that?
The only suggestions I have is somebody that's into the botanical work that once they grasp on the idea that there is a lot that could be explored with this capability I'm talking about.
It seems to me a large agricultural company, for example, Cleve,
yes,
should have an enormous interest in what you're doing. I mean, it might be a way to grow, yet even, we're always doing that in the U.S., trying to figure out how to grow larger, healthier crops, right?
Yeah.
So this is big money we're talking about here, so you'd think they'd take a little money and look at what you're saying.
Well, at one time there's a field called radionics where something such as this was attempted, where certain frequencies were worked out to where these radionics people would put even a picture of a field in a special device they had and work out a frequency, then try to improve the health of the field just by radionics. Are you acquainted at all with
I am not. With what kind of results?
Well, there was some government interest in it way back. I talked to a general that was in charge of that, but it was so out of line with the conventional body of knowledge that I think that it got stigmatized and probably dropped.
Well, I guess people better read your book. Maybe that'll launch more research. You're on the air. Good morning with Cleve Backster. Where are you?
I'm calling from the Netherlands.
The Netherlands?
The Netherlands.
Okay, you're going to have to yell at me, Netherlands. You're not too strong, but go right ahead.
Okay, Cleve. It is really an honor to talk to you and Art. I notice you're keeping a more conservative show. You've not mentioned anything about sperm or blood on this one.
I mentioned briefly something about blood, but the sperm, it's just an oversight. It's not that I'm afraid to talk about it, but when I was interested in seeing if this capability went down to the human cell level, that was one of the first things that was tried, was a sperm sample with electrodes put in it, and then the donor, who has grown too old to get repeatability on this experiment any longer, would crush an amyl nitrite capsule. And this is used for dilation of blood vessels for people that have, blood pressure problems and so forth, where they don't have a stroke. But when they inhale the fumes at a distance, the sperm sample shows huge reaction.
There you go, caller. Now you've got it all.
That's in the book too, by the way. I'm not holding that back.
All right.
The question I have for you is I have access to about 100 1990s era EEG machines that can be refurbished. And I was wondering if these would lend themselves to people who wanted to do this research, as Art mentioned himself.
Well, let me tell you something. I think it would, and I wish you would, tune into our website, primaryperception.com, because we have people that are asking us every day questions of where they can get a hold of some equipment that will will make a tracing. And the idea of the accessibility of inexpensive EEG just hasn't been a solution so far.
What I will do is email you if you take mail with the name Dan, and so you know that I'm emailing you.
Okay,
we can discuss this.
From Netherlands, right?
Right.
Okay, I'll recognize that, and I would be very anxious to communicate further with you.
Well, we do a paranormal company, and I would love to play with this myself. So that's
100 EEG machines. Copy me on that email, too.
Well, I'll tell you, I think we could get rid of those in a hurry for you.
No doubt. Well, I kind of heard that in the back of his voice.
Are these chart drives?
I don't know. He's gone now. So,
okay.
But we'll find out very shortly in the email.
Absolutely.
100. Wow. West of the Rockies, you're on there with Cleve Backster. Hello.
Hi. My name's Carol. I'm calling from Willow Creek, California.
Hello, Carol.
And this is just a great topic, and so I had a story I thought I would relate.
Okay.
Years ago, I lived in San Francisco, and I had a roommate who hated plants. If I was gone a few days, she wouldn't water them. She'd always threaten to throw them out.
Yeah.
And if I was gone for a few days, then, or a week or something, I'd come back, and it would be just drooping. And it was a split-leaf philodendron, really beautiful and big. So after we weren't living together anymore and I was living someplace else, the plant was just doing wonderfully. And about a year later, she came to visit. And I was working, and she stayed at my place. And after 2 days of her being there, well, I was at work, so I wasn't there all day, my plant started to wilt and turn yellow.
You're getting repeatability right there.
And so after she left, it was fine, but I lost leaves, and it looked like it had some kind of, disease, what was happening. And it was just, it remembered her and her attitude.
I had an experience back in New York where this botanist visited me when she was coming through New York, wanted to see how to electrode the plants. And I had tried out the philodendron, which I used for a lot of my early research, and every one of these leaves were reactive, the different plants that I attached before she arrived. When she arrived, these plants all flatlined. They wouldn't show a single thing and I asked her, I said, do you do anything that harms the plants you work with? She said, harm them, my dear. I roast them to get their dry weight.
Oh, no.
And these plants are actually faded. And when she left, they all came back and were reactive again. I could hook them up and get tracings.
Yeah, but that's why I love this show, because plants do, and they do remember what
I
happens
think
to
so. I think they do.
And thanks for all the information tonight. And Art, you're wonderful. I'm glad you're there on weekends.
You're a sweetheart. Thank you very much. It really will provide, I don't know, an awful lot of material for people to think about. I mean, if this is true, it changes our relationship with almost everything, or it should, if we embrace it. And just amazing. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Cleve Backster. Hi.
Hello, Art and Cleve.
Hi.
Art, do you remember when you interviewed Rupert Sheldrake and he talked about the people recognizing when somebody was staring at them?
That's right.
This falls into that same category, and I do believe it has to do with harmonics interfacing with the field frequencies. I'd like to ask Cleve if he is aware of the 50 fireflies or more in a tree that blink in unison, or the schools of fish that wheel at the same instant.
Only casually, and this is fascinating, in flocks of birds that all turn at the same time and so forth.
Yes, without a ripple effect.
Yes, absolutely. Schools of fish and the birds, etc. And I'm not sure just what is involved there. It seems like there would be some kind of field, because just the idea that they could biologically communicate with each other, I don't think would allow for that rhythm, and that synchronization of flight and so forth.
There is so much in heaven and earth that we just don't have a clue about. We really don't, do we?
I do believe it's a feedback loop that takes place. And Art, you remember when you spoke about your echoes coming back on your radio?
Yes, of course. We're almost out of time here, but yes.
That also, I believe, is a feedback loop that saturates the field, and you get the echo back to the point of the original disturbance for that field.
Believe me, it's as good. Thank you. It's as good a theory as any, and we've had some wild ones for that. Well, Cleve Backster, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. I'm glad you wrote the book, Primary Perception, and everybody interested in this should go out and grab it right away. But you've been a real pleasure to interview, Cleve, and I should have done it long ago.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the invitation.
Okay, my friend. Good night.